Welcome to Book Talks, where you get to meet the amazing authors of Two Sisters Writing and Publishing, where they share their insights, instructions, and inspiration that can hopefully help you open a new chapter in your life to live bigger, bolder, and brighter. With me today is an amazing woman. I met her at a writing workshop at Saginaw Valley State University. Then she became my coaching client. She was just amazing working on this awesome project. And now we have the privilege of publishing her book just in time for Pearl Harbor Day, December 7th, 2020. So with me today is this amazing new author who's going to share her journey, her inspiration, and how this book can touch your heart the way it touches mine. I want you to meet Elaine Makas. Elaine, welcome.
Thank you. Thank you. Glad to be here.
I'm so excited because you said you were going to do this and you did it beautifully. I mean, can you show us the cover and talk about the title and tell us about what the book is?
Okay. This is the cover. This is called Young Man on the Front Line, Lessons of War. This is my dad in 1943 at this time, 18 years old, drafted to World War II to the European theater. My dad was a quiet man, and he later, as he got older, began to share a lot of stories with me that had a connection to so many things. He was an amazing man. He was an amazing soldier, patriot. And so the book is about his experiences in the war as a young man, and then how he adapted to the traumas of war and how he led his men. And then through his life, how he was able to put it back together and get over, just make his life work from the experience that he had.
Excellent. Beautiful. So I want to talk about your process of writing and the point of view that you used, but I first want to hear a little more about your father's life. Your family was immigrated from Greece, correct?
Correct.
And so this is kind of an immigrant story. Was he first generation, second generation?
He was second. His parents, my grandparents, all migrated. They all came from Greece.
Mm-hmm.
In the early 1900s, my grandfather actually served in the American Army in World War I. And then my father, they would be second generation. And but when he went to school, they didn't speak any English. It was only Greek spoken in the home. And each neighborhood had its language. There was the Italian neighborhood and the Armenian neighborhood. And they all learned to speak English in kindergarten together.
Oh my gosh. So your grandparents came to Detroit and your father was raised in Detroit, correct?
Correct.
Okay, and then you were born here as well and you grew up in this area.
Yeah.
Okay, excellent. And then your father was drafted into the war, and then you write about that, and then he came home and you were born?
Correct. Okay. My father did not marry till a few years after he came back from the war.
Mm-hmm.
It took him a while to acclimate back to society. Mm-hmm. And he never did regain his patience with triviality or with ungratefulness, drama. And so he kind of measured his life on the saying that, does this require me to get up in the morning and crawl up a battlefield with people shooting at me? And then he'd go, oh, no, it doesn't. So I guess it's a good day.
Wow, what perspective.
Yeah.
So not only did he proceed through life with that perspective, but he instilled it in you.
Absolutely.
That's beautiful.
Yeah.
So Elaine, can you please tell us how you chose to write the book? It's not necessarily a biography of your father. Can you describe the unique perspective that you selected to write it?
Yes, I guess you would call that first person. It's his voice. It's still in my mind all the time. From the time I was little on up, I was very close to my father. It's two of his voices, because you get his young, innocent voice where he thought that this was going to be fun to, be a soldier. And then you get his voice as he matures, and then at the end of his life, how he put it all together. I used very short, powerful sentences, a lot of one-word sentences that just say, because in war and in trauma, I mean, one word does it. Horrific. It's horrific. That's it,
Right. Well, you did a beautiful, tear-jerking job of executing this very unique perspective, because you, from the very beginning, it's in your father's voice, as you said, and it just drew me in. And when you were my book coaching student, I taught you to write with your five senses, actually your six senses, your five physical senses: sight, hearing, touch, taste, smell. And then the sixth sense is the intuition or the gut feeling of an experience. And you captured all of that brilliantly with excellent dialogue. And you wove in the historical accuracies from the actual battles based on your research. You're an academic, so you had the brilliant ability to do the research to make certain that every portrayal of World War II was perfectly accurate. And then you wove the storytelling around all those facts, and then you wove in what your father had told you. And then you have amazing photographs. It's just such a beautiful execution of a pretty grandiose concept. And you executed it beautifully. So tell me what some of those challenges might have been in doing so.
It's a challenge in aligning my dad's chronological record, because he kept a diary of each battle and what happened in each battle, with the southern invasion of Germany. So I had that data, I had his stories, and then all the little stories he put in between there. One of his friends got upset with these chickens and just decided that the chickens had to go, and scared everybody, and and so and then, so it was, my biggest challenge was weaving in the facts with his journey, with the personal stories that he told, so that it all wove together and wasn't jumpy, that it, and there were times when, I wrote this whole thing out, and I'm like, oh my gosh, I missed a battle. So I put another chapter in, and I write the battle and all the stuff, and then I go back and I read it, and I go, oh, wait a minute, that's the same battle as this one. And so then I cut it back out. I finally just did it the old-fashioned way, and I just printed the two chapters and took a scissors and cut them, and took tape and moved them around. And I had this long piece of paper to get that chronology correct.
Right.
With the correct stories,
So wow, Elaine, that's awesome. The writer's journey is different for everybody, but the bottom line is you have to get to the right destination, no matter what.
Correct.
So, is your father still living?
No, my father passed in 2015.
Oh, I'm very sorry. Did he know you were going to do this?
He did. I actually have a note from him from in 1994. I had talked to him about doing this and asked him if he would put his little stories where the battles were, because I couldn't figure out where some of the little stories were, like when they were on patrol, or when they captured some Germans and things like that. So he did that, and then he wrote me a note that said, here you go, honey, good luck writing this up. And,
wow.
But the difference, I think, is I did not create the emotions that came from the text. It's just obvious what emotions would be. But my father would not have always shared those emotions with others like he did with me. But I think they're so important. And so what I tried to do at the end of each chapter is I made a lesson of war and just said a really key important thing that he learned from that chapter's experiences, and the ability to endurance is a key theme here.
Is your mother still living?
No, my mother passed 20 years before my father.
Oh,
and
sorry.
So I was very close to him because he was a widower, you know, and they were very close, and they were very happy together. So we were very close because he was alone.
And do you have siblings?
I do. I have an older sister and a younger brother, which puts me in the middle.
And so what's their reaction to you writing this book?
My sister's really excited. She's very encouraging. My brother is a little more afraid I might get the story wrong, but I didn't, so fine.
Beautiful.
But at first we had to talk about it because he's like, and I'm like, so, and he'd say, now he says to me, did you get this story in? Did you get the story?
Oh.
I go, yeah, I got that one. Yeah, I got that one. Remember when I go, oh, yeah, I better put that in,
So Elaine, the people who actually stop dreaming and talking about writing a book and the people who actually write the book and then publish the book have a burning desire to get it done and present it to the world. What is your burning desire? What is your inspiration to present your dad's story this way?
First of all, it's an honor to him. He was a very honorable man, a very good role model for young people, always. And he always enjoyed talking to teenagers and young people and people in their 20s. The other thing in me is I've spent many decades in the educational field, and I know how people struggle and how they have to struggle with things that are outside of their control. And it was such a testimony of him and his men to not only survive, but to cope and to help others along the way. And that's what really pulled them through, was the fact that they were doing this together.
That's really beautiful. And then who is your target reader? Who do you envision reading this book?
Well, it was a moving target, which it isn't supposed to be. You're supposed to know your audience. Right. And so I initially wrote it for high school students of history and American Lit and, American U.S. relations and all of that. It seems that the older people just take to it. Adults just take to it, and veterans. I mean, I showed it to a colonel who is retired from the 63rd Division of the Army Reserves, and he loved it. He was just amazed by it. And then I had a reverend read it, and he was like, "Oh my gosh, people who are struggling really need to read this, Elaine."
Wow.
And then when a high school teacher read it, he's like, "Oh yeah, this will capture the kids." So I think that people who want a heartwarming story that's triumphant,
yes,
plus people who have struggled with trauma, and even veterans. Veterans are like, "Oh yeah, you know, so.
Yes.
So
Oh,
the
beautiful.
audience got broader,
Uh-huh.
but I think it was because there were certain things I was layering into the book.
Mm-hmm.
You can
Mm-hmm.
see that there's this layer and this layer and this layer.
Mm-hmm.
And people relate to the different layers of the
Mm-hmm.
book.
And you again, you execute it so beautifully, the way you weave everything together, and the love of a daughter for her father just exudes, the pages just exude that. You can just feel it. It's awesome. And the cover is just gorgeous. It was designed by Bobby Ivory Jr., but you actually came up with the concept. You had a vision for what you wanted your cover to do, and the graphic designer was able to execute it the way you wanted it, and the sort of frayed leather and the old look of it looks beautiful. So, Elaine, why do you think it's important for young people to learn about World War II?
There's two layers of that. One is that it's really hard for them to understand how the world works today if they don't know how it was divided up in the past.
Mm-hmm.
It's hard for them to understand the decisions that were made in the past because those decisions might not seem right now. And so it's an important base for them to be able to work correctly with the world today and their country. And textbooks don't always do it, you know. I mean, they just don't. I was a social studies teacher when I started my career, and one day I just looked at the kids and I'm like, don't you guys like history? And they're like, no. I'm like, what? I thought everybody liked history.
Uh-huh.
And so I had to find ways to make them love history.
Uh-huh.
And so the other thing is that history becomes depersonalized. And so if you can relate, and young people, they usually relate to reading about people 5 years older than them because they're always thinking about when they get to this age or when they get to this age. So for them to read about a young boy who graduated from high school and went to war, is they can relate to that person. And so something that was flat history becomes something they understand.
I love that. I love that. So you're bringing it to life. So hopefully teachers will order the book and have it for their students to read, because it really puts a face on the story. It puts a face and all the emotions on the stories of World War II. So it's not just this battle and these statistics about it. It's this real person who was only 18 years old experiencing that horrific reality of war.
You know, as they go through the war together, him and his buddies, you begin to see how the world is reorganizing itself. You know, as this part of the war ends, and you know, they start discovering the slave labor camps and the concentration camps and what happens when they integrate with that, and then the displaced people, and then when they begin to have to secretly transport German scientists out of the country because the Russians are looking for them too. And so you begin to see the next steps, the next setup of the world. And I think that's a really important layer for students of history of any age. Doesn't matter if you're 16 or you're 60. You know, the understanding of how the world just keeps folding in a different manner.
Yeah, it's absolutely beautiful, because I love that you said that understanding today's news can be enhanced by understanding why things are set up the way they are. And that's really, really, really important. Did you ever feel sad or overwhelmed with emotion as you were writing? What was that like? Some people can write about things and just kind of detach, even if they're writing about something sad or tragic. But other people like relive it, and that makes them not even want to write it.
Yeah, right. Exactly. I don't think I could have written it the first year after my dad passed. The grief was just too great. It was a hard loss for me. Once I got into the stories, it was actually like visiting with him again.
Oh, wow.
Hearing his stories again. And him saying, now, daughter dear, war may be necessary, but it's not good.
Oh my gosh.
I still hear it. So.
Wow, that's so beautiful, Elaine. Oh my goodness. So his voice kind of helped you tell the story. It was like he was talking to you, right?
Right. Oh, yes. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Wow. So tell me what it felt like when you finally finished the book.
Oh my gosh. Well, first of all, it's kind of like a painting, if anybody paints. Like, you have to know when it's done. And I think you keep laughing at me. I keep sending you another manuscript going, I found one date that I had to correct. And so, so it's like, when it's done, step back. But the other thing is thinking you're done too soon. Because I thought I kind of had it, and I had one of my friends look at it, who's an English teacher, and she looks at it and goes, yeah, your words aren't powerful enough. I'm like, oh no, but started at the beginning, page by page, chapter by chapter, and I went through the whole thing again. Took me 2 more weeks to make sure that the language was as powerful as the message. And so I did that. Then I went back through it again to make sure that the senses were in the right way to fold into the scene. Because when you start writing, sometimes like you forget that stuff. You know, I mean, you're just trying to get the story down.
Right.
Go back and go, yeah, I can't hear anything here. I can't see anything here. So I had gone back and done that. And then I went through another time and inserted some of the military information that people wouldn't know.
Oh, okay. Okay.
Why do they call them GIs? How do mortars work? What happens, you know, if somebody is wounded next to you? What do you do? There's procedures for all this, you know. And so I had to do some research because I just couldn't call them up and go, hey, Dad, in World War II, what did you do for this? You know, I'm like, right. But writers have a huge advantage because I remember when I learned to write, you used to have to go to the library and go through the card catalog. And, you know, now, oh my gosh, you know, and I work with students who do research. There's just a vast amount of information that you can get very quickly. Right. You just have to make sure your source is accurate.
Yes, yes, you know? Yes. So how long did it take you from the start of writing to completion?
I started in January, end of January, early February, a little bit, but then in March, when we were all home for COVID, you know, and I wasn't at the school, I just worked on it all the time. Every morning, I would work on it about half a day, and then all the way through July. By July, so it's 5 months later, I was then going back and reworking every chapter to make it deeper.
Oh, okay.
And then when I started doing that, I couldn't stop. I'd start at 8 in the morning and 2 in the morning, I'd still be going.
Oh my gosh! I love that! I love that! That's awesome!
That was engrossing, you know.
That's awesome.
And there was only one time, Elizabeth, that I broke down and cried because when I had those pages everywhere and nothing was matching, and I didn't understand how they could be here and suddenly they're here, and I'm just like, I can't do this. I'm like, okay, take a step back.
Right.
You know, back to my dad's position, you know, it's the end of the world, and so I worked it through, but I mean, that night I was just ready to quit. And I'm like, that's silly.
Mm-hmm. I love that you said he put everything into perspective, that he woke up and it was peaceful and there's no mortars dropping and gunfire blasting and your life isn't on the line. You just get up and have your coffee.
Yeah.
You know, I personally, when I read accounts like war stories, that helps me in today's life to appreciate the peace, the fact that we can go to the grocery store and get whatever we want. Because World War II, there were rations, there were all kinds of things that were extremely inconvenient for civilians during the war. And not to mention the soldiers were putting their lives on the line, and many lost their lives.
Yeah.
My father served in World War II in the U.S. Navy in the Pacific theater.
Pacific, which my dad always said, I'm so glad I didn't get sent to the Pacific. It was hard. It was even harder to fight in the Pacific than in the European theater because of the cultural differences. One thing I noticed about my father and my mother is they were always content. They were content with whatever they had. They were content. They got this little bungalow. When they could enjoy a bigger house, they loved that little house. They were so content with peace, mm-hmm. with a world that wasn't being torn apart. And I think of that because my kids tease me about being a baby boomer and baby boomers having too much stuff, you know. And,
wow. Wow, that's fascinating. Well, I love that you're keeping the spirit of celebrating our soldiers alive. My father's brother, George, he is on the wall of the missing soldiers in Hawaii because he disappeared at the Battle of Tarawa in World War II in the Pacific Theater. So that really hit home for my family, and that's why my father wasn't in combat, because there was a law that said if one sibling dies or disappears, then the others don't have to go to combat. So he was spared in that regard, thankfully. But I just absolutely admire what you're doing. I think your book is going to touch people across the spectrum of readers. My first inclination wouldn't be to pick up a World War II memoir, which is what I would think of it as. Once I started reading it, Elaine, I was like, oh, I was completely captivated. Like when you're in a movie and you're sitting there and you're completely focused on the screen. You're not thinking about your grocery list or where do I have to go after this? Nothing. You're just there in the moment. And that is masterful writing. So you achieved that. And I'm so proud of you because you put in the time, you put in the energy, and you did it. And you're preserving your father's legacy.
Yeah. Love is a great driver. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
I suppose we could say that on the opposite end too, but where, you know, hate can be a great divider, love is a more powerful healer. And the love I have for him and his comrades and what they did for us, I want everybody to know about their dedication and their love for this country and for its people, and they were true patriots, I think.
Oh, that's beautiful. It's so important. And it's so important to preserve that legacy and celebrate it in today's world when so many things are coming under bizarre clouds of confusion and disrespect even. So, yeah, beautiful, beautiful, Elaine. So tell me how you're going to be promoting the book. Like, can people meet you? Are you going to be doing virtual events, or what's your plan?
Well, that's a whole new world for me. I always tease when I talk to you about that introverts don't promote books and laugh about it, you know?
Yeah.
Well, I'm learning. Yesterday, I worked on the Facebook page. I'm redoing my LinkedIn. I wrote a list of places that I would like to send letters and maybe a little brochure or something that talks about it. I'm thinking about how to do pre-sales. I'm learning. I'd love to go to schools. I've been in schools all my life, so I can talk to students and that sort of thing. But right now, that's very limited. We might be able to Zoom it, but it's just not quite the same. But that's a difficult thing for me. I'm not sure how to maneuver the social media world. So I'm learning. I'm willing to learn. I'm willing to do it because I think that the message is really important.
Absolutely. I can see you speaking at libraries and historical societies, and there's so many people who absolutely love stories that, like what you wrote, that are so beautiful and all about love and celebration and survival and preserving a legacy. So I'm certain that people are going to devour this book, and it'll be coming out just in time for a Christmas gift, so that will be extra special. So one more thing, Elaine, you were part of my book coaching program, and you also had several individual book coaching sessions. As a writer, can you please provide any advice to other writers, especially if they're writing their first book, on how or not a book coach and a book coaching course helped you?
It was the tipping point for me, because I thought that I had an idea. I had this incredible story. I didn't know how it would become what it would become. So you need somebody to like bounce it off of and say, okay, and then we just talk about it until, it's like a clay sculpture until you get it to its form. And then you actually start sculpting it, you know what I mean? And so I couldn't have cleaned it out in my head, if that makes any sense.
Yeah.
Without the book coach. Because the basis is everything. And I'm going to relate it to, I coach research students. The beginning is the most important, because if you don't set up your research correctly, it will implode on you and you'll get just tired of working on it because it just goes on and on and on. It's the same with a book. When you work with a coach and you can form it, then it works, and not going and going and going, and then that doesn't work, and trying this angle and that doesn't work. And so not only does it give you form, it saves you a lot of time. A lot of wasted time is not wasted,
Right. Excellent. That's a great
I also have to say, though, that I have been around other people who write or who coach, and I found your style exceptionally helpful. Just your whole outlook, your whole energy, that you were a visionary and you could see it, where sometimes if I talked to other people, they couldn't see it,
Wow.
And so I think that after I went to that seminar, which was in the fall, I believe, I said, yeah, that's it. Yeah.
Wow. What was that, Elaine?
This was the way I was going to go, was with you and with Two Sisters Publishing.
Oh, thank you so much. Oh my gosh. We love what we do, and thank you. We're so excited to share our energy, expertise, experience. We're about to publish our 25th book, and yours will be the 27th, because we have one coming out October 1st, November 15th, and then you're December 7th. So you'll be number 27, and very lucky number, because your book is going to be very successful and touch people's hearts and preserve your father's legacy. Elaine, can you just talk a minute about your academic background, like what your career has been, please?
Sure. Actually, I started out, was a history major in college because my father loved history and he instilled that in me. I became a social studies teacher, high school. I worked a great deal with alternative ed students and students who could not maneuver the social world of school. And so we would have certain programs for them. I taught history and government to many, many alternative ed students they're amazing. They're just amazing people. I then went into administration, and I ended up at an intermediate school district as a curriculum director. So I worked with curriculum with 9 school districts. I retired from there and I began my own consulting business, helping small rural schools mostly with curriculum because they couldn't afford their own curriculum director. So I would work with teachers on that. I finished my Ph.D. out of Oakland University in Michigan in educational leadership. I taught there. I was an employee of U of M Flint as a professor for 2 years. Saginaw Valley State University. I'm adjunct now, and I also coach dissertation students.
Oh wow!
I love.
Oh my gosh!
I love doing that. So I just retired from the curriculum business.
Oh my gosh!
It was a big decision, but I can do the things that I can find new roads in life too.
I love it. I love it. That's awesome, Elaine, that's so cool. We are so proud to present your book to the world. So thank you for joining me here today on Book Talks. And is there anything else you'd like to share with people maybe who are thinking about writing a book or using a technique that's very different from the norm as you did?
I would recommend everybody has to find how it works for them. Like for me, I would set a timer for an hour and then I'd have 15 minutes off. And then I'd set a timer for an hour and then I'd have 15 minutes off. I made sure that every day something was done. And on days that I couldn't write well, it wasn't flowing, then I would work on the appendices or the research or, another part that has to pull it all together. And so everybody kind of has to find their flow. I always recommend outlining. I just think that I can't help it. Outlining is a saving grace. I love listening to authors speak. So there are many podcasts and classes out there where major writers, journalists, thriller writers, all that kind of stuff, talk about their craft. I find that really interesting.
Oh, you do? Okay.
Yeah, I just listen and listen. And I don't remember who, so may he forgive me, talked about how you can develop a character just by describing their bedroom.
Ooh,
so that's what I did in the beginning with my dad. I just put in and it worked. It was a small, humble room, single bed with a handmade quilt, handmade curtains, little model cars on this desk. And, you sort of got a sense of who my dad was and I'm like, I'm going to try that,
That's amazing. I love that. That is so cool. So I'm so happy you said that because Catherine, my business partner and sister, Catherine M. Greenspan, and I created a podcast that for now is a live program on our YouTube channel. And it's every Monday night at 5 o'clock Pacific, 8 o'clock Eastern. And it's called 10,000 Things. And we talk about the 10,000 things you need to know before you write, publish, and promote a book. Because in the 4.5 years that we've been in business, we have realized there's 10,000 things you need to know. Nobody tells you. Because we do everything from concept to completion and beyond. And also, a book is a long-term experience. Like our relationship with you is going to be long-term, because you don't just publish the book and say, bye, see you, thanks. Your book will be in existence and sold and promoted forever. So as long as we're here. So,
and now I'm thinking about my next one, so.
Love it. I love it. Excellent. Excellent.
I can do this. I'm going to do another one.
You should. You absolutely should. I mean, you're just very gifted, and you have the discipline, which is the secret sauce to writing a book, is discipline. And then you sought the guidance that was required to do it right. So I applaud you, Elaine, and I'm so grateful that we have. You're welcome. So honored that we get to present your book to the world. So thank you for joining me here on Book Talks.
Thank you.
And thank you for watching Book Talks with the authors of Two Sisters Writing and Publishing, who teach you the insights, the inspiration, and the instruction on how to open a new chapter in your life to live bigger, better, and bolder while helping people everywhere at the same time. Happy writing and happy reading. We'll see you next time.